the Snapchat have captured people's attentions to the point of excluding all other methods of acquiring information. Thus, in a post-pandemic teaching, it's essential that instructors utilize teaching methods that will draw students away from their electronic devices. So this paper proposes that an effective way to command attention in an L2 classroom is by utilizing a community engagement, learner-centered model in the L2 classroom. Penn State Berks has integrated this twofold approach through community bilingual storytelling in all levels of our Spanish classes. Penn State Berks is located in Reading, Pennsylvania. Reading is the fourth largest city in our state. The census data from 2022 reports that the average household income of Reading residents is about $44,000, which is a poverty rate of about 40%. 67% of Reading's population is Latino or Hispanic. And Reading is the home of a large Hispanic population and the Reading School District, which has about 18,000 students. The school's district minority enrollment is 90%. 86% of which are Latino or Hispanic. Thus, it makes sense to provide L2 Spanish learners with language immersion, real-time experience, and real-life language exchange with heritage speakers, while at the same time providing service to our Latino and Hispanic community. The bilingual storytelling project at Penn State Berks started with one school in 2018 and has since expanded to 5 schools in the Reading area district. We also have 2 more schools waiting to be onboarded. The project began when faculty noticed that the area children did not customarily go to the public library for story hour because the stories were offered only in English, and many of the children did not speak English. Since the instructors were searching for new language connections, they concluded that a real-life experience that also served the community at the same time was a perfect opportunity. Therefore, Penn State decided to perform dramatized bilingual readings for elementary and middle school children at their schools. It's important to go to them where they are. And stories are read in both English and Spanish or in both languages. And I have to add that we've also added Arabic and French to our repertoire as well. But for today, we're concentrating on the Spanish and English. Okay, so from the perspective of a foreign language class, bilingual storytelling is a high impact practice. It compels students to enact the 4 core skills that they must conquer in any language class. That would be reading, writing, listening, and speaking. With bilingual storytelling, students utilize their language skills while learning cultural competencies and experiencing firsthand issues involving diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And that seems to be a common thread in all of the things that I've heard this morning. Rather than an instructor explicitly teaching these concepts, students learn how to think, solve problems, and generate hypotheses on their own. This type of learning forms the core of the learner-centered classroom. Whoops, excuse me.
Donna?
Yes.
We can't see your slides changing.
Oh, I wonder why.
Maybe you have to go into presenter mode.
Okay, how do I do that?
See down the bottom of that window. There's that little icon that's sort of next to that slider right down the bottom.
Is that moving now?
No. Maybe you're sharing the wrong window. Maybe stop sharing and then try sharing again.
Okay, let's see what's going on here. Oh, we're at let's all right, I'm going to X out of the whole thing. I'm so sorry about that. Okay. Let's see. Okay, let's go from current slide.
Yeah, I think that's working now potentially.
Okay, so are we seeing? All right, so we saw this.
Yeah, we saw them on the side, but now we can see them. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, very good. All righty. So let's see. Let's find out where we are. Okay, so So bilingual storytelling, are we good now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, bilingual storytelling aids in language learning because it communicates information, as you can see, in an interesting and engaging way, which is much more effective than simply just hearing plain facts. The meaningful context of the story and the continuous repetition of phrases allows both storytellers and listeners to achieve mastery of the vocabulary. In addition to teaching language skills, bilingual storytelling enriches social and cultural awareness and builds empathy by opening doors to new cultures and traditions that previously may have been unknown. Participants gain an understanding that people may have the same wants, needs, and fears, and therefore the other may not be as different or strange as once thought. Providing student-centered activities that furnish target language input in a meaningful and authentic way is at the core of learner-centered classroom. Mary Ellen Weimer, a key promoter of LCC, defines 5 key changes to the practice, and bilingual storytelling meets at least 3 of those 5 principles. One is that it is directly engaging students in the messy work of learning, as you can see on the screen. Students are going to select the story and the characters they wish to portray, and the professor serves as a guide in the process. And of course, the students would seek help from the professor or the instructor as needed. Second, we have collaboration. This is a particularly important aspect of this project. Without it, the project would flounder. If students do not collaborate with one another, let's say at rehearsals, the story would be missing characters and plot lines, and the children who have been anxiously awaiting a live storytelling event in their native language would be terribly disappointed. So realizing how important their part impacts everyone else is a very valuable lesson learned in this project. And thirdly, it encourages students to reflect on what they're learning and how they are learning it. A post-performance reflection session is conducted in the L2 language to discuss the successes, failures, and the lessons learned from the project. So shifting to an LCC pedagogy such as storytelling is becoming the new paradigm in the L2 classroom, fueled in part by the can-do assertions put forth by ACTFL and Linguafolio. These 2 organizations advocate for increased student participation in the learning process because language can be acquired more effectively when the learners are situated in a communicative environment. And that should be no news to anybody listening to this conference, right? So LCC pedagogy may prove to be a bit too chaotic, though, for certain instructors. They cannot imagine a classroom without repetition, rote repetition, verb conjugations, vocabulary charts. However, LCC is effective and it produces results. To see some of those results, we can look at Lee and Lee, which in 2022 offered several examples in support of the notion that students enrolled in LCC or flipped classrooms are more motivated, they're more engaged, and they're more likely to participate in the lesson by asking and answering questions, which is what everybody wants. More importantly, they are more willing to use the target language. Another LCC method is teaching proficiency through reading and storytelling, abbreviated as TPRS. It is effective because it provides a highly motivational way to learn a new language by presenting vocabulary and grammar via a non-threatening, stress-free platform. The story's context allows students to stretch their imagination and enables them to comprehend constructs just a bit beyond their current level of language production. The proponent of this is Dr. Stephen Krashen, and he terms the phenomenon of comprehending language just beyond one's linguistic competence as comprehensible input. Dr. Krashen, a leading expert in the field of linguistics, has many theories of language and language acquisition and development, and he asserts that students who learn an L2 language more naturally when instruction is delivered with context and meaning, and that just stands to reason. Bilingual storytelling offers meaningful interaction in the target language, which is then reinforced with images and repetitions. This active exchange adds dimension and perspective to the story, as opposed to simply memorizing meaningless generic vocabulary lists. Storytellers and listeners produce communicative language. without necessarily focusing on grammatical structures. And that for some professors is a little difficult, but remember the goal here is comprehensible output. Doesn't have to be perfect. Thus, in Krashen's terms, the student acquires the L2 language in the same way as that student would have done while acquiring the L1 language. Comprehensible input is at the center of a TPRS lesson, and the story should target the vocabulary and structures the instructor feels is appropriate to the curriculum, because we don't want to overstress the students by starting at a level that's way too high for them. Since not all students will initially comprehend the totality of the story, the instructor should offer a variety of activities to ensure that comprehension can be successfully achieved by all students. This can be done by asking simple yes or no questions, then progressing to more content-based questions once the group masters the basics of the story. The instructor can also task the students with asking questions or adding elements from their own imagination to the story. This is a lot of fun when you try it. The result is that students will enjoy creating all kinds of scenarios for the characters in the story. The more fun the story becomes, the more students want to add to it, without realizing the students accomplish storytelling in the target language. What is important here is that it's not the correct employment of verb conjugations or grammar necessarily, but rather it's the comprehensible language output that will eventually lead to proficiency in the target language. When students enjoy classroom activities, they will participate exponentially because they are more motivated. The drive is not necessarily to score an A, but to explore and participate in the activity that caught their attention. High motivation, or the affective filter, is a component of TPRS that is common in Krashen's theories. Because students have selected the stories themselves, they are interested in the content. They are motivated to become familiar with the structure and the meaning of the story, and this helps boost their self-confidence. Rehearsing the story lowers their anxiety level as they become familiar with the story as a whole. High motivation, low stress, and self-confidence brings us to high output. And eventually a successful acquisition of language through an enjoyable and a memorable experience. When the storytelling is turned into a performance, students can add yet another dimension by creating their own activities to accompany the telling of the story. These activities could be in the form of a word search, a crossword puzzle, or a matching game. Each activity makes an impression to help participants remember the new words and constructs at hand. The last step in working with the story allows learners to use their imaginations as far as it will take them. They may even create their own sub-stories to accompany the original narrative, enacting further language production. The result is an extension of comprehensible input and output far beyond the initial level of language competence. The impact bilingual storytelling has on both students learning the language as well as on the students to which the stories are told can be measured in multiple ways. But for Penn State Berks, one successful measure is that schools repeatedly invite our students back to perform these stories. Another successful measure is that the storytellers themselves return annually to participate until they graduate. Bilingual storytelling empowers children whose first language is not the predominant language of the society in which they live. It lessens social inequities by promoting a sense of belonging, and it reduces anxiety because the stories enable linguistic and cultural development for both the storyteller and the listener. It helps both parties engage in conversation about the differences and similarities in each other's customs and traditions. For marginalized children, bilingual storytelling promotes a sense of belonging when stories that they can relate to become a part of the daily routine or narrative. For the storytellers, dramatizing and recounting the stories as opposed to memorizing linguistic and cultural content evokes a range of emotions, which in turn builds empathy. By minimizing the alienating effects of difference, participants can relate to one another, break down barriers, and build trusting relationships. Finally, it merits mentioning that the bilingual storytelling addresses the UN Sustainable Development Goals of quality education and reduced inequalities by providing access to literate pieces to children in their native language. Oh, okay, I'm almost done. It also promotes peace, justice, and strong institutions. So, in conclusion, in an era of fierce competition for students' attention, bilingual storytelling is a high-impact practice that grabs student attention much more than memorizing vocabulary and verbs. In an L2 learner-centered classroom, bilingual storytelling affords students control over the delivery of the lesson. Control in the hands of the learners reduces anxiety, serves to promote a sense of belonging, and enables linguistic and cultural development to occur in a manner more akin to the way one learns these constructs while growing up. Bilingual storytelling places the responsibility of learning squarely on the shoulder of the students, and they embrace a pedagogical method. They enjoy the experience, and they acquire the language and cultural skills they will not soon forget. So, utilizing bilingual storytelling as a community engagement opportunity elevates the language acquisition beyond a language lesson into an empowering experience that builds empathy and understanding as the stories lessen social inequities by engaging students in conversations about the differences and similarities in each other's customs and traditions. Thank you. I made it through.
Fantastic. Thanks very much. We can move to some comments and questions. I'll take